Hi guys, and welcome to this quick introduction to Adobe After Effects. We're going to be going over a few of its features, tools and general layout. So when you open up After Effects, you're greeted by this screen here, and you can either open previously saved projects, or like in this case, we're going to create a new project. Then you're given two separate options to create your composition. You can create a new composition manually and select all the features that you want, or you can create a composition from footage. And if you click on that, what that does, if you select a video clip, it will create a composition using the settings of that video clip or image. So it will use the same resolution, the same image size, and the same frame rate. So it might save you some time if you're adding visual effects to a video clip. We're not doing that today, so we're just going to create our composition from scratch. So we'll select the frame rate, the resolution, the image size manually. So we're just going to create a new composition. We're going to click on that, and that brings up a dialog box with all the different parameters that we can change. So by default, at least for me, it's set to HDTV on 1080p, which is standard high definition video, 25 frames a second, which is also standard frame rate. You've also got the duration of your composition, which is set to 10 seconds. So we're going to click OK. This is the After Effects layout. Now, what is After Effects for? After Effects is for visual effects, it's for animation, it's for graphics, motion graphics. You might also hear it described as compositing software, and what compositing is when you take different types of media and you combine it into a single finished product. So if you were a compositor in an animation studio, you might have to take the character animation, the background artwork, various other assets, and combine all these elements into a final shot. This same principle applies to VFX as well, and in fact to all other types of animation. It's all about combining these elements. And the way this is happening is through layers. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, After Effects works on very much the same way. And in fact, like a lot of image editing software, After Effects is essentially Photoshop but for moving image. So if I go back to my text tool and I just click anywhere, I can create more text, and that's created another layer here, a separate layer. This is my toolbar, so I was using my type tool there. You'll be familiar with some of these other tools if you've used Photoshop or similar software. You've got your pen tool, your eraser tool, brush tool, shape tool, and they work in similar ways. By default, I'm on rectangle, but if I hold down my left click, I can select other shapes, and you just click and drag to create a shape. You can change its color. So I've got some options here, but most of my options are down here. This is how I edit my layers. I can transform the position of my layer, the position of the scale, its rotation, how transparent it is. And there are other options too. If I create another shape, it's actually within the same layer by default. So this layer now contains a number of different shapes. If I want to create a new layer, I'm just going to minimize the shape attributes, deselect it just by clicking anywhere, and create another shape. And now I've created a new shape layer, which contains one rectangle. You can also use the shape tool as a mask. So if you're selected on a text layer, say, you can use it to mask out parts of the image. Other tools that it's useful to know about is the zoom tool. You can zoom in. You can also scroll. You can also zoom in here. The hand tool can help you move around the frame. So if I'm zoomed in, you can use it to navigate. And this is the selection tool. So you can use this for moving things around or selecting things. So hopefully this is beginning to look a bit more familiar to you now. This is the timeline. We've looked at layers. We've looked at some of the tools. This area here, this is where your media lives. So if you wanted to import video or bring in images or any clips or animations that you previously created, you can just go to Finder and you can just drag it straight in, or you can add it straight to your video timeline by just dragging it over the video timeline. We're going to undo that because we don't need that footage. Now the other bar here, most of this you're not going to be working with initially, but effects and presets you will need to know about. We have lots of different effects that we can add to distort or to enhance our layers. And I'll show you a few, but I encourage you to go through these and try them out for yourself. Let's go into distort. And the one I'm going to add is turbulent displace. So you can also search for effects up here, but I've found the one I'm looking for. I'm going to drag it onto my shape layer. And you can see at once that it's created a distortion. Playing through it, nothing's actually happening. But what we're going to do now is we're going to actually animate the distortion so that it begins to gradually lose its shape. So up here, this has now created a tab. You can actually go back to the media project where your media is stored, or you can now go into your effects control tab. So there's various options, different parameters for this effect. We're going to turn the amount of distortion down. Let's make that 0. Now, everywhere in After Effects that you see one of these stopwatches, that is because it can be animated. So if I click on the stopwatch, I've enabled the keyframing. And there you can't actually see, unless I open the layer, you can actually see that a keyframe has been created. If I move to the end of the project, and then I change this setting now, it will automatically create another keyframe, and it will animate between the two keyframes. So if I turn up the amount of distortion up, it's created another keyframe, and it's going to animate between the two now. Now you can see this bar has turned green. That means the animation is loaded and ready to play. If I change something now, you can see that it's no longer green. Sometimes it takes a while for footage to load, so depending on how complicated your composition is, it may take a while for it to load the animation. One of the reasons it's loading quite quickly now is because it's on third of the resolution, so you can change the resolution and this will change how fast it will play back. So if I put it onto full resolution, it'll be a lot sharper, but it will be a lot slower to load, as you can see. So it's good to actually keep that at around half or a third, depending on how fast your computer is. Now, as well as being able to keyframe animate up here in the effects control, we can also keyframe down here in the layer options. So if I go into layer, you can see you've got the same stopwatches, and I'm selecting my text now, I can keyframe in this position, and then I can move my object, and you can see that I'm keyframing now between two positions. I can actually flip between them here. I can do the same for scale. I can scale it right down. I'm going to have to, and then scale it right up again. And I can do the same with rotation, with the transparency. You can animate almost every setting and attribute within After Effects. And if you can't see that attribute, you can go to Animate, and you can add that attribute to the layer options so that you can animate it. So I can animate the tracking of the text, for example. Change the tracking amount like that. And I could have that animated over time. Now that we've created this beautiful animation, we need to export it as a video file. And there's more than one way to do that in After Effects, but I think the best way to do that is through Media Encoder. And Media Encoder is a separate piece of software that comes with After Effects. It looks like this. It's basically a separate renderer, so I can send my After Effects file here and it will render it for a video file. And the way you do that is you go to File, and you go to Export, and you go to Add to Media Encoder Queue. And the other way to export files is just through the render queue. After Effects has a built-in render queue, but I'm going to show you Media Encoder, and I think it has a few advantages. Let's add to Media Encoder queue. In Media Encoder, there are really 3 settings that you can change. Here you can set where you want your file to go. So you can pick the folder and you can rename your file. This is the file size and quality, resolution, frame rate. And then it's set to match source, which means it's matching to the settings of the composition in After Effects. There's no real need to change this most of the time. I've set it to H.264, which is quite a good format because it uses quite a small file size but maintains the quality. There are many other formats to choose from here, but I think H.264 is a good option. When you're ready, you can just click the play button and that will render the file. One of the advantages of using Media Encoder is that it does not freeze up After Effects, so you can carry on editing projects and using After Effects as your files are rendering. Our file is now rendered, and we can just click on that and that will take us to the folder, and we can play our animation. Thanks for watching this short introduction to Adobe After Effects. I have a more in-depth tutorial available which goes into more detail into creating a more complex sequence. Thanks for watching. Take care, guys.